Welcome, Met fans, to tonight's Season 3, Episode 38 of Down on the Corner, the flagship show of KINER'S. We're thrilled to have as our guest tonight former Major League Baseball center fielder Brian McRae. Brian played for the Kansas City Royals, Chicago Cubs, our beloved New York Mets, as well as the Colorado Rockies, the Toronto Blue Jays from 1990 to 1999. Brian was known for his speed, switch hitting, and his role as a consistent top-of-the-lineup hitter. After his playing days ended, he worked for MajorLeagueBaseball.com radio for 5 years, as well as working on ESPN Baseball Tonight. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. And I'm looking forward to it's that time of year, spring training baseball, and let's get the regular season started.
Absolutely. So as always, I'll start off the show with a couple of questions and we'll turn it over to the Zoom room for some questions as well. For all those in the Zoom room, please remember to keep yourself muted at all times until we turn it over to you guys. So it seems unbelievably over the last 3 weeks, we've got a little bit of a trend going here. Basically, we've had the last 2 weeks teammates of yours, Dave Magan and Matt Franco. Both of them also have family members that inspired them to play baseball. Matt Franco's grandfather, Bing Russell, played a huge role in his love of baseball. Dave Magadan's cousin Lou Piniella also had a huge effect on him. I know when I did my book with AJ Carter Glove Story, you were very kind of your time and you allowed me to interview you for that book. So let's start right there. So many father-son baseball memories begin with those simple moments, just having a catch. Your dad was already in the minor leagues the year you're born, and the following year, he's beginning his 19-year Major League Baseball career. What's your earliest baseball memory with your dad, Hal?
I just remember shuttling back and forth between all the minor league teams during the summer and winter ball before he got called up. At a young age, we were always on the go, and my uncle, my mom's brother, was the designated driver to take us from city to city. I remember being in the car on the interstate and just going back and forth when my dad got called up or got sent back down or did something. So those were some of my most my earliest memories. And then winter ball in Venezuela, Caracas, when Caracas was nice in the early '70s. I ran around the streets of downtown Caracas
Wow.
unsupervised as a 5 or 6 year old. Rico for winter ball, doing things that you wouldn't dream of doing. We have no relationship with Venezuela. My dad played in Caracas for the New York Yankees, basically the capital team there in Caracas in Venezuela. I think they were the Sharks, the team there. My dad played for that ball club, and just the excitement and the energy level of winter baseball. Those are the things that I really remembered from my early days.
I remember you telling me that as you got older, you got to be around the big league team a lot, especially during spring training. And you worked out with them quite a bit, and you were fortunate to have those experiences. You didn't really play much little league at all, but you're exposed to baseball at such a high level at a young age. How did that shape your feelings about the game?
I was able to kind of intertwine with what they were doing during spring training from the time I could hold my own. So maybe 10, 11 years old. I would go through the drills with the guys in the early part of spring training. I was part of group three working with, the infield instructor, the outfield instructor. So they allowed me, while I was being a bat boy and a ball boy, those early few weeks of spring training, I went through all the drills and did pretty much everything that those guys were doing. And then I'd shag in the outfield during BP. So I would get help from the outfielders and the outfield instructors. So as soon as I could hold my own, they let me do pretty much everything, hitting the cage in groups, do everything off the same machines they were hitting off of. I was like I was a part of the team. And they let me do all those drills and all those practice. So all those reps I got with those guys. And that really helped me because I found out that I'm not that far off from where they are. And I saw the work ethic and the things that they put in daily to get better. They were really good, but they worked really hard at it. And that helped me learn that these are the best of the best, and they're still working like they're not. in spring training, and so that helped a lot shape the way I went about my business and how I got myself ready.
That's pretty amazing if you think about it, especially those Royal teams were pretty superstar studded teams as well. I remember Bump Wills talking about the same thing with his experience with his dad taking infield with that Dodger infield of Garvey, Say, Russell, and Lopes, and he was out there at short. You're drafted in the first round by the Royals in 1985, the same team that your dad played since you were 6 years old. At that point, when you're drafted, did it ever cross your mind that you might get the opportunity to play with your dad at the professional level?
It didn't, because he didn't know how much longer he had left in his career. And as a high school player, you're probably 5 years away, 4 or 5 years away from the big leagues. So I didn't know and didn't even think about the fact that we would get a chance to play in a spring training game together and do anything like that. I was just thrilled to be drafted and wanted to start my journey of trying to get to the big leagues as fast as I could.
So it's interesting because, yeah, so it's basically, I guess, 39 years ago last week that you
Yeah, well, I
guys
think
made
last
history.
Thursday or Friday it was. Yeah.
Yes, you made history. Everyone, immediately says, "Oh, the Griffies," but no, you guys were the first guys to play in a Major League Baseball game. Granted, it was spring training, but you and your
But it's still
dad,
a professional game. So that's what I tell people. It's like it's still a
absolutely,
professional. It's still a professional game, and the first ones to do it were the
yeah,
McRaes. Yeah,
absolutely crazy. Dick Hauser pencils you into the number 2 spot with your dad batting right behind you as a DH. First time in Major League history that father son are in a Major League lineup. What do you? I mean, I can't imagine, especially since it had never been done. It actually was done. I mean, we talked about this in Glove Story in the Negro Leagues, a pitcher and a catcher, but that was ages ago. But you're the guy. You guys are the first. What was that day like for you?
it was similar to my first day in the big leagues. You're just kind of floating around, and it doesn't seem real, and you're nervous. But once the game starts, it's something that you've done a lot. So I couldn't wait to get through all the pregame, all the interviews beforehand, and just let's play the game and see what happens. So that 3 or 4 hours before the game, once I got to the ballpark, that's a blur to me. And I was ready to get that over with. And then the game seemed like everything was slowed down, and it was something that I was comfortable and familiar with. I was just playing. I was on the team playing ball, and the guys were a little bit older than me, but I'm always used to playing against older guys. So that's the way I looked at it. And it was a fun day, and I was fortunate enough to I think I got a hit and then stole a base and turned a double play. Did some things, did some positive things, didn't mess up too much, and it was something that now that I look back at it, and like wow, that you're able to pull off something like that. That number one, that my dad played a long time in the big leagues because he had a rotator cuff surgery, which at that time was a career killer. And because of the DH in the American League, he was able to continue his career. If the DH isn't around, none of this would have happened because he couldn't throw anymore. He was
Right.
done as a player. So my dad had some fortunate things happen to him for him to last as long as he did, and then for me to progress through high school and get drafted by the Royals and then get opportunity to come into big league spring training that first year after I was drafted with the team that just won the 1985 World Series too. So that was a big thrill as well.
So obviously, as a first round draft pick, the expectations are extremely high from you from the start, as well as due to your father's 19-year success in the major leagues. Um, did you view that as an advantage or a disadvantage?
It just depended on how I was playing. When you're struggling in the minor leagues, then you hear the whispers of why was this guy drafted in the first round when he's not as good as these guys, And especially because it was my father's team and things like that. But when you're playing well, nobody says anything, and that was the big thing that I had to get out of my mind was I was there because I could possibly be a player that could play in the big leagues. And granted, it probably helped more than hurt that my father was a successful big league player. But
So
they wouldn't have I wouldn't have gotten to play 10 years in the big leagues just because of my father's name.
absolutely. So your rookie year with the Royals, you're the backup center fielder for a pretty good athlete, guy by the name of Vincent Edward Jackson, better known as Bo. What was it like seeing him play and just his pure athleticism to be able to play two sports like that?
Well, once he got injured and I got called up, he didn't want to play center field anymore. So after that first 2 or 3 weeks that I was in the big leagues, he was moved to left field, and I played pretty much every day in center field. He was like, "It's too taxing on me. I don't want to play center field anymore," and he moved over to left. So it was a lot of things were going on in my mind just because I got called up in August. I'm playing right away. I start playing well. Bo moves to left. All these things are going on, and it took me a long time to process what had just happened in the off season. And I'd known Bo through the minor leagues for a couple of years and watched him. And if he would have just played baseball, the numbers and the things, records he would have broken and things like that. But he was such an exceptional athlete that he was able to play two sports, and that probably diminished what he could do on the baseball field and on the football field. But I think it's an honor to be on the same field with him, and I always joke with when people ask me about the short period of time I spent playing with him in the big leagues. Like, if he doesn't get hurt, I don't get called up.
Yeah, interesting. It is
Just
amazing.
it's one of those fluke things, and he gets hurt, I get called up. They say you may be around for 2 weeks, and we'll send you back to the minor leagues. And 10 years later, I was still kicking around.
Yeah, so after the 5 years with the Royals, you play with the Cubs, where the evolution of Sammy Sosa starts to take place. Prior to your time with the Cubs, the most home runs that Sammy had ever had was 33 home runs. The 2 seasons you're there, he hits 36 and 40. When you were watching him, could you ever envision that he would have 3 seasons of 60 or more home runs in his career?
60 is a stretch, but I saw him as a 15 or 16-year-old with the Rangers in the minor leagues. They had a skinny Juan Gonzalez and a skinny Sammy Sosa. We were all running around Sarasota, Florida as 16 to 17-year-olds. And you could see the potential there. You didn't know who was going to make it and who wasn't, but you could tell he had bat speed, he could run, he was going to grow into that body. And, seeing him later, almost 10 years later, when I was traded to the Cubs, I wasn't surprised that he had turned into the type of player that he turned into because I saw the unfinished product in the Gulf Coast League and in A ball in Florida.
It's pretty impressive career. Those numbers, the home runs, pretty crazy. So you arrive in New York as part of a trade in 1997. Some players thrive under the bright lights in New York while others struggle with the pressure. What was the biggest adjustment you had to make? Granted, Chicago, Kansas City is not the same. Chicago is very similar, but it's still New York. How did you handle the media and the fan expectations, and is it different?
It's totally different because you have so many more people watching you, so many eyes on you, and that's when the Yankees were just about to start kicking it in gear. So it was baseball wise, it was Yankees town. the Mets had been bad for a while. They won the '86 World Series, and then there was a big lull, and they hadn't done much. In the '90s, they hadn't done a lot, and they've had a lot of hype. They had a lot of good first round picks that were on that team, or on some of those teams that flamed out, and guys that just didn't click. So it was weird because I remember the Mets from the late '80s, and just their swagger, that what they had, and then playing against them in '95 and '96 when I was with the Cubs, that organization had lost all that, and they were trying to find it, and then getting there with Bobby Valentine as a manager, they were starting to find it again in '97, and then seeing everything get the progression of it in '98 and then '99, getting back to where the Mets were a team that you didn't want to face. They're a team that was going to be tough to beat. They were a team that was scrappy. They were a team that had an attitude. So that was neat to see. And being later in my career, I understood the media and the things like that. So it didn't affect me, the things, as much. I wouldn't want to be a young player at 21, 22 and having to deal with the things that, being a first round pick with the Mets is different being a first round pick with the Royals.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, it's also interesting too because those two seasons with the Mets, they had identical records of 88 and 74, second place both times. Both teams, if the current system was in place, would have, gained a wild card berth. But those are the two most successful team records that you ever played on in your 10-year career. Did it feel like that? Was it different than years with the Royals and with the Cubs and the Rockies? Did it feel that that was a very successful team while you were in the midst of those seasons?
Yeah, because I've been close in the Royals in '93. We started to turn the corner. '94, it was a strike year, so we were only 3 games out at the time of the strike. We had a legitimate chance to make the playoffs. '95 with the Cubs, we lost on the last game of the season, or we would have made the playoffs. So getting to the Mets, I'd been close, and getting there in '97, I think we finished 4 games out. '97, we collapsed at the end of the year, and then get there, and then '99, that was a playoff year, but I was traded. It felt like I was close, and the Mets years it just felt like it was a culmination of being close in Kansas City, almost getting there in Chicago, and then having some really good teams. I think I played with some really good teams, '93 and '94 in Kansas City. The '94 team was probably one of the best teams I think I played on in my career because we could pitch and play defense. The '99 Mets was the best defensive team I played on. In '98, those guys were there too. '98, we just ran out of gas at the end of the season, but I think that we were a legitimate playoff team in '98, and then you saw what they did in '99 and 2000. So those things were starting to turn the corner, and it was fun to be a small part of that.
It's interesting you mentioned the Kansas City defense and the Mets defense. And, you know, as much as this game gets, boiled down to numbers and analytics and every single stat you can think of, the old baseball adage from back in the '30s still holds true that you need to be strong up the middle. And those Met teams, the defense, up the middle, maybe the best. I know Piazza gets a bad rap with his defense, but I thought, during his Met career, his defense had vastly improved over his Dodger years. But you had Hundley first and then Piazza. Then up the middle, you had Carlos Baerga and Ray Ordonez at short and you at center. I think the 2 years back to back was a 981 team, fielding percentage and 987. What made that team so good defensively? And we didn't even mention Olenrud at first and Fonzie at third.
Well, I think number one, we understood what our strengths and weaknesses were as a defense. We played well together. We communicated well together. And we had a pitching staff that they weren't big strikeout guys. They put the ball in play, but we knew how to position ourselves. We knew what they were going to do. You know, we were just all in tune with each other. And it was beautiful to watch. You know, sometimes I would have to pinch myself watching some of these plays in the infield, watching Ray Ordonez, make plays that shortstops shouldn't make. And it was every day we were doing something defensively to crush the opponent's will as far as offensively. You know, they thought they had a rally going. Nope. You know, we make a play, make two plays there, turn a double play that we shouldn't have turned. The momentum shifts to our side. We get a run here, get a run there. We're not giving up. You know, we didn't give up extra outs. You had to earn the runs that you got against us, and that wore teams out.
So, every spring, every year, it just seems to get worse and worse. The amount of players that break down due to injury. During your career, you were extremely durable. You played 150 or more games, 5 different seasons. The couple of seasons you didn't, one was a strike shortened season, one was your rookie year when you got called up. What do you think contributed to your ability to stay on the field? And do you believe the way players train and prepare today has contributed to the rise in injuries?
Well, one, I always felt it was my duty to be on the field. And especially after I got established. And my dad always told me, if you're an established big league player, your teammates look to you. And you have to play when you're not 100%. Because if you can't play when you're not 100%, how do you expect those guys to play? They're looking at you. So you may have to give up some at bats. You may have to do some, you may have some bad days, but you getting on the field sets a tone for other guys on the ball club. And two, I just took care of myself. I knew that my legs were a big asset for me, being an outfielder, running bases. I made sure I came into spring training in baseball shape, not just bodybuilding looking shape. And I structured my workouts in the off season to be a baseball player, where I think a lot of these guys, what they do in the off season is to look good on the beach. But it's not baseball specific training to what they do and to what your position and demands. You know, I'm running left field, right field, left center, right center, running the walls, breaking up double plays, stealing bases. So I'm beating up my body a lot. So I need to get myself ready for that. And that's something that I don't think guys do. They do a great job with their personal trainers, and they're in shape. You know, look at these guys. They're big. They're strong. They look good. They look good in their uniform. But strength and flexibility. You know, I did a lot of stretching. I did yoga. I did things like that to get myself ready. And I don't think the guys really, the majority of them, look at their off-season training and say, make it specific to what I do as a player, where I can stay on the field as long as possible. I never went on the DL in my career.
Right.
Minor leagues, big leagues. You know, I never missed too many days because of injury. I just made sure that I took care of myself, and I knew what the demands of my position and what I needed to do. And I don't think guys are in tune with their bodies as much as they are. Now, pitching is totally different now. So I can't speak for the train for pitching and the Tommy John surgeries and things like that. But as far as a position player, I wanted to be out there every day. I didn't want any days off. So I made sure I got my rest. I made sure I knew how to treat myself in the hotel room or back at home. I take ice bags and I take a stim machine and I do things like that. And, I may sit 3 or 4 hours doing treatment on myself away from the ballpark just to get myself ready. Get up early in the morning and do things. Those are things that I was doing to get myself. You don't start getting ready at 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Sometimes you get ready at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning for a night game because you're hurting and you need to get yourself ready. So those are the things that I learned throughout my career is what's the injury and what's nagging and what can you kind of work with to still get the job done. And you're a guy that the team relies on. People are looking to you. You have to make some sacrifices and do some things. I can't sit. I got to play.
Hopefully, like some teams, have a paradigm shift. And we've been saying this in the Zoom room show for the last 3 weeks with every, guy that gets injured, like yoga and stretching and flexibility needs to be incorporated into these guys' off-season routines because the amount of, lats and intercostal strains are just, out of control. I have two more before we turn it over to the Zoom room. And I think we've been spoiled here in New York because obviously after your playing days ended, you made that transition from the field to the broadcast booth. This is a path that many players take. Not everyone thrives in that role. We've been extremely lucky here with Ron Darling, Keith Hernandez. Before that, Tim McCarver, Ralph Kiner. What were the biggest challenges you faced in making that switch, and what qualities do you think separates a great broadcaster from someone that just simply knows the game well?
Well, I think that you have to have the ability to articulate what's going on in the field to make it easy for the fan to understand. Nowadays, they're getting a little bit too high tech for me with all the analytics. I don't want to hear all of it. And I don't know how many fans want to, but it's the end thing. What I was taught was you go to a bar with your buddies and the game's on TV. How are you guys talking about it? It should be conversational. It should be easy. Act like the people that are listening to the game, radio or TV, act like they know nothing about the game. Dummy it down a little bit, make it easy for them to understand. And then you can throw some things in there every now and then, but just have a conversation. A nice conversation talking about baseball, explaining why this happened the way it did. So to me, and I took broadcasting classes when I was in the minor leagues to prepare myself for this because I wanted to be a broadcaster before I wanted to be a ball player. So that helped me because I was doing these things while I was playing, and I just tried to make it simple. And you don't need to overcomplicate, especially on TV. The people see what's going on. Just explain it as a ball player would explain to their buddies sitting at the bar why something happened or what that guy might have been thinking there in that situation. But just don't overdo it. They don't want to be inundated with too much stuff. They're watching the game. They want to be informed. They want to kind of think of what was he thinking in this situation, what maybe you would have done differently or what guys would do differently. And that's it. It's not you're not solving a trig or something like you're talking about baseball.
Well, unless you're watching the game on Apple and we get into percentages of if the guy's gonna, what he's gonna do on a 1-2 pitch 32% of the time. Like
I turned down the sound on that.
Exactly. Well, I found a great Apple hack, and I told the guys in the Zoom room last year about it. Apple has the ability, if you toggle all the way to the far right, there's those three boxes, those three dots. If you click it, you can toggle off the Apple broadcast and put in your home team's radio call. And it's
Perfect.
great. It's great. All right. Lastly, before I turn it over to the Zoom room, for the guys that hopped in the Zoom room late, BMAC is actually sitting in his car. He's at a tournament now. You've been vital as a GM for the Kansas City Sluggers program, which has a strong track record of developing talent. Alumni such as Albert Pujols, Sean Markham, Joey Devine, Aaron Groh, and Blair Johnson. But youth baseball has changed significantly over the years. How have you seen travel programs evolved? And with the new college rules impacting recruitment, how has that changed the way programs prepare athletes for the next level?
I think travel ball, for the most part, is garbage. It's bad. It's a money grab. And a lot of parents feel that that's what they have to do to get their kids to the next level. And a lot of these organizations aren't helping out a lot. They're just taking your money and you're going to tournaments every weekend, but you're not learning the game. And what I wanted to make sure was that we practice almost as much as we play, because that's how you learn the game. A lot of these organizations, they play games Thursday through Sunday. You don't see them again. They bring guys in from out of, all kind of crazy things like that. But it's showcase baseball. It's like going to a pro day. Nobody knows how to run the bases. Nobody knows how to hit the cutoff man. Nobody understands the ins and outs of game situation. They're just trying to throw the ball as hard as they can as a pitcher, hit the ball as far as they can. So I don't like that aspect of travel ball, where you have kids that don't know the game, that understand how to play the game. They can do some things on the metrics that look good. Their exit velo is great. They can run, but they don't know game situations. And I think that's what the big thing that I'm seeing that's going down is you don't practice, you're just playing games, and you don't understand how to play the game. And then you get to the college level or the big league level, and it shows the lack of practice time you've had learning the game, because game situation is the worst it's ever been.
You're not 100%, 1,000% correct. I see it here, Long Island, and I've had this argument, and it is a money grab. And the parents are worse than the people that are, the snake oil salesman, because
It's all bad.
yeah, it is unbelievable. All right, I'm going to turn it over to the Zoom room because I want BMAC to get back to the tournament. Stevie had his hand up first, so Stevie, go ahead.
BMAC, if I can call you that, Johnny
Yes, sir.
Bomarito said to say hello.
All
Call
right.
me back from the day. He's actually married to my cousin. But anyway, I wanted to take you back to September 1998, playing the Astros, ninth inning, down two. You're up against Billy Wagner. What was in your head? Because I know as a fan, when I saw Billy Wagner on the mound, I'm like, ah, shit, we're doomed, and you tattoo one. So what was that like for you?
That's one of the only times in my career that I tried to hit a home run. I saw fastballs coming, and I was like, I'm just gonna load up quick and see what I can do. And I'm trying to go deep. I'm gonna strike out, or I'm gonna go deep. It's the end of the year. We were selling out to try to get into the playoffs. We needed things to happen. We were running out of gas. We were on fumes that last week or 10 days. And I was trying to not let this game go into long extra innings because we were tired.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Damon, you were second. You had it up. Go ahead.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me again.
You got
Hey,
it.
Brian. How are you, bud?
I'm good, thank you. Yourself?
I'm doing very well. It's a pleasure to be talking to you. I think it's amazing that you played your whole career, minor leagues, without going on the DL. That blows my mind a little bit. I never knew that. When the season ended, did you take like a couple of weeks off to just forget about baseball? What did you do, and when did you start preparing again for the next season for spring training?
I took about a month off from anything other than maybe some light working out. And then I started to get my body ready after that around the holidays. And then I would do baseball activities starting in January to get ready for spring training. But I let my body take a rest for a while, and I would just maybe ride a bicycle, play a little basketball, moving, but didn't do much. So you need to let your body, after that long season, rest. And I see guys doing things year round now, and I don't understand why they do it. Their body didn't ever get a rest.
Sal, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, Brian. Pleasure.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. My question is, the day you got traded to the Mets. Now, I've asked a couple other athletes, what was your day like? Did you know you were going to get moved? And, how did they tell you? And then what was your reaction?
I got a call from the radio station in Chicago that I was traded. So that was kind of odd there, that the team didn't even tell me. It was leaked, and I found out. I was at home, and I found out from one of the local radio stations, and what I did is I just went to the ballpark, got my stuff. I think I played in a game that night in New York.
What was your reaction to I'm going to the Mets?
My reaction was I have a chance to go to playoffs, because the '97 Cubs team, we weren't that good. We had struggled and we were out of it. So that's why I got on the first plane I could to get to New York, because I figured they're trading for me. We have a chance to make it to the playoffs. And I never made it to the playoffs in my career, and I wanted to make it. And if they're trading for me to help them try to get to the playoffs, I need to get there as soon as possible. Some guys take 2 or 3 days to get there. I got my stuff, and I was on the next plane, and I was in New York that night.
That's awesome. And one other quick one. You played with Turk Wendell in Chicago, and he came with you over in New York. What kind of an experience is it playing with him?
The pitchers are odd to begin with, so you just kind of take that with a grain of salt. He went from being a sideshow act to a really reliable reliever, and that was the biggest thing that I saw that I liked, was you can do all those crazy things, but you can't get guys out. It doesn't really matter. And he came up with the Braves, so I played against him in the minor leagues when he was with the Braves system, and he was nothing more than just an act. But he turned himself into a darn good, reliable relief pitcher that got some of the biggest outs that you needed late in ball games. Once he came to the Mets, he turned into another, he kicked it into another gear, to where he was not just a guy. He was really good.
Excellent.
So
Brian.
Sal, before we let you go, Sal, so just so you know, Brian, every week Sal is a memorabilia collector, and somehow miraculously he has something related to every one of our guests. And I think we might have thrown him a curveball today, because originally Skip Lockwood was scheduled to be on, but Skip had a last minute engagement that he couldn't get out, and you were gracious enough to come in last minute. So I don't know if we got Sal off guard. Did we, Sal?
Oh, you certainly got me off guard. But let me tell you, look at this boy's stance. Is that a ball player or what?
That is a sweet stance.
I mean, you were made to play center field. You got the body of a center fielder. You have the legs of a center fielder. Tremendous glove. I mean, I loved watching you when you were here. I loved it.
Thank you.
All right, Brian, I'll let you get back to your tournaments. I really appreciate you doing this last minute. Great stories as always. Always a pleasure talking to you, man.
No problem. Thank you very much. And let's go Mets. Have a good year.
You got it, Brian. Be good. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You got it. Brian McRae.